Hello, welcome all to the International Space Federation monthly Q&A session or scientific exploration of some of the research and concepts that we're working on in the lab. I'm going to take a quick look to make sure that all systems are nominal so that we can get started here with diving into some unified physics concepts. And today, since I am the biophysicist on the research team, we're not only going to be looking at some concepts coming from the unified physics research that's being done here, but how it applies to biology, the biophysics of understanding the living system and how the unification of physics via quantum physics and general relativity into that unified framework is giving us deep insights into the nature of the living system and the biophysics operational at the fundamental most levels that are engendering this amazing form of living matter in the universe. So it looks like most of our systems are working just fine. We've got the Q&A going. The chat's disabled. Okay, so let me enable the chat real quick and then we can get this show on the road. We can get going. Okay, so chat is enabled for everyone. And so if you'd like to, now that we have the chat working, feel free to say hello. It's always awesome when people say where they're joining us from, because we have people joining from all over the globe, which is just awesome. I'm sure that if we didn't have some of the time zone issues, we would literally see people from all over the globe joining us here. It was in May me and Nassim and some of the research team went to Japan for a presentation at the University of Kobe. And it was an aquaphotomics conference. So that is on the study of the interplay of light and water and how we can understand water's coordinating and orchestrating behavior on matter via looking at it through spectrophotometry. But it was really humbling and fantastic to see how even over in the land of the rising sun, which is pretty far away, I think, for most of us, that even there was a huge amount of people with a lot of interest in unified physics and unified physics research in particular that is being done here at the International Space Federation. So it really is, we're a global community interested in advancing science and uh, producing some of these technologies like harnessing quantum vacuum energy fluctuations and gravitational control and these kind of things that are going to get us to the next level of civilization, of human civilization. Okay, so without any further ado, I can get our talk for today started. And it's great to see you all saying hello and where you're coming from. So today we are going to be looking at quantum resonance memory accession via space-time networks. And this is very recent research that we've been conducting, and we've been making some very significant and exciting discoveries in this area of research, and it's being spurred by the recent publication of The Origin of Mass and Nature of Gravity. Well, published as a preprint. It has not yet gone into a journal where that's in progress, but also there's a second paper, a subsequent follow-up to that Origin of Mass and Nature of Gravity paper that is in preparation. Some might have already heard of it and maybe even seen some of Nassim discussing some of that paper. But so This is looking at a process of the biophysics involved in memory in the cellular system, even at a higher cognitive level, like the kind of memory that we all have. And also, it has a generalizable application to understanding memory in general in physical systems in the universe. So even kind of like a more general understanding of what is memory to the universe. What is the nature of memory to the universe? And I also call this instantaneous memory accession via quantum geometrodynamic circuits. And for those who are a little bit more technical, don't get this confused with the Wheeler formalism of geometrodynamics. I'm using the same kind of terminology here, but uh, it's not to be totally associated with Wheeler's formalism of quantum geometry dynamics. Just that I'm discussing a evolution of the space-time manifold, its geometry and a multiply connected geometry, and how that it connects to the biological system via quantum mechanisms. So that's quantum geometric dynamic circuits. But so my background, for those who don't know, is in cellular and molecular biology. In fact, in some of my postgraduate work of research, I was investigating a thing called neuronal cytoarchitectonics. And that's looking at the large scale structures of the brain. It forms very specific structures, the limbic system, the basal ganglia, the amygdala, the cortical areas, the cerebellum, all of these kind of things. But even at a finer scale, because it's a fractal system, you can see some of this structural organization recapitulated at the cellular level. So it's neuronal cytoarchitectonics. I was investigating this as part of my postgraduate work to try to understand the nature of consciousness in the biological system. And it was actually during that research that it really, where I was studying vivisections of the brain, so actually looking at real brain structure, that became apparent to me that this is a highly fractal structure down to the molecular level. Uh, and so what I need to look at in addition to the mesoscale neuronal architecture was actually subcellular cytoarchitectonics, not just the mesoscale architectural geometry and structure of the brain. So now at the subcellular level, you're at the microdomain. These are macromolecular assemblies that we're considering now. And so this is necessarily involving quantum physics, even just in the trivial sense that quantum physics ultimately describes how atoms interact to form molecules and how molecules interact to form bio-macromolecular assemblies and the electrodynamic forces at play in those kind of interactions and organization. So I needed to begin to investigate the biophysics of the microdomain of the subcellular system of neurons and other cells as well. And so I had the great privilege when that was developing to meet up with the brilliant physicist Nassim Haramein and his research group. And so what I've been doing since that postgraduate work is looking at how to develop a unified physics model of understanding consciousness and brain function. I'm going to present some of that model today in what is termed quantum resonance memory accession via spacetime network. Now, this was presented recently at the Science of Consciousness conference uh, here in Europe, in Barcelona. And I believe that it gives us some insight into the nature of consciousness via a scientifically delineated understanding of one derivative element of consciousness, which is memory. And actually, it was well received. The organizer of the Science of Consciousness conference, Stuart Hameroff, mentioned this talk specifically as a new way that we might understand memory in the biological system and memory more generally in nature. One of the ways that it sheds some light on the nature of consciousness is that mechanisms I'm going to describe are inherently non-computational. This is key. It is describing memory not as a function of digital encoding or algorithmic processing, but via instantaneous accession of information via frequency and resonance. So this gives us a major hint on the validity of the predominant scientific paradigm of consciousness, namely that it is an epiphenomenon of computation. So to start, we'll look at the fallacy of computational functionalism, because that is the predominant prevailing model, theory for how science attempts to understand the phenomenon of consciousness. So first, do we need to go beyond that model, what we already have? The conventional understanding of neuronal brain function via computational functionalism, which means that, roughly speaking, at a certain level of computational complexity that is involved with neuronal processes of the brain, consciousness pops out of there. And you have awareness and a subjective experience. That's computational functionalism, very roughly speaking. So it's encapsulated by the neurocomputational paradigm, in which the brain function is a result of computation, and the basic computational unit is the neuron. Now I'm going to look at why we're going to look together at why this is erroneous. The neurocomputation model obviously treats the brain like a computer, and there's some insight that can be derived from that. There are computational like processes. You can even think of neurons akin to a discretized structure, digital in that way. But largely it falls short of in capturing the true quintessential nature of the biological cell and biology in general, and the brain as an organ, not a machine, not a computational machine. So I'm going to give an example of how it fails, and why this prevailing model is incorrect. So one thing that we can look at why it's erroneous is, when you're talking about what Hamroff, again, the organizer of that conference, the Science of Consciousness conference, and many of you might know him from his work on the orchestrated objective reduction model, which we'll review a little bit. He says neuroscience needs a revolution, and one of the reasons for that is because of the cartoon model of the neuron, where the neuron is envisioned as a simple logic gate, a binary on-off state. But this is erroneous because the neuron is a complex multi-unit processing system. It's a multimodal processing system that is processing information with frequency and resonance. And it's not just this uh, binary on-off type state that where it would function as a bit in the computational paradigm. And so one of the ways that we can look at where this fails is by studying a very specific phenomenon called hyperthymesia. So you've probably all heard of amnesia. Amnesia is when you have a total loss of memories. There's a converse condition to that called hyperthymesia. And that is a condition where instead of losing all memories, you can never lose a memory. And actually, many individuals with this condition describe it almost as a state that is hard to deal with. It's a difficult state because not being able to relinquish some memories can be, as you might imagine, very, very difficult. I'm going to pause just for one moment to check real quick on to make sure that we're still all good on the system, because if I'm going and there's some problem with like the sound or the visual, I wouldn't know it because I'm only seeing my presentation. So I'm just checking that nobody's sending me messages, because I'm a one-man show. Yeah, so I'm just checking to make sure nobody's sending any messages like we can't hear you or we can't see. So okay, everything's good. All right. Just double checking. It gives me a little bit of peace of mind to know we're all good. Okay, so this condition of hyperthymesia. Now, so individuals with hyperthymesia, they have extensive recall of events of their lives. It's also sometimes just called superior autobiographical memory, because as far as has been studied so far, it's not a kind of memory that, at least as I understand it, and has been documented, is something that could like allow somebody to have total recall of a physics textbook and therefore be like a genius with physics or something. It's more like this extremely high capacity recall of autobiographical data, like what happened during the day in your life, that kind of aspect of consciousness, of memory, I should say. Now, within the neurocomputational paradigm, this kind of condition is not well described, to say the least. And in fact, it was not believed that this would have even been possible, this level of memory recall. So actually, it wasn't even described until as late as 2006. You can see that one of the first publications objectively documenting this condition in a comprehensive, rigorous empirical method. And that's because these individuals have extensive recall almost every day of their life, and it's almost automatic the way they describe it. It's you give them a date, and that date is almost automatically recalled, and they can see it play as if it's a movie, replaying in their mind. So almost like they have a recording, a memory, a video recording of every day of their life. And this has been quantitatively assessed, and you can see that the individuals shown with these white bars in this histogram here, uh, who are potentially highly superior autobiographical memory related individuals, when they're tested on certain parameters, they just blow the control, or normal individuals, right out of the water. It's not even really a comparison on how well they can recall certain information. So it's a real thing, it's measurable, objectively, and you can hear people with this condition describe it in detail. It even has I think it's a 60 minutes program that has documented this, and it's really fascinating. But from a quantum memory framework, this level of recall suggests something other than synaptic encoding, something other than the computational model. The nature of this recall, as it's described and quantified, demonstrates these individuals have like automatic level recall. In an instant, they're seeing a moment of their life, perhaps 20 years ago, replay as if they were watching like a movie scene. And this automatic retrieval suggests it's a kind of relational accession. They're not digging through a file, a memory disk, looking for the right file and processing it and pulling it up. It's like instant. So this is like suggesting a topological level in registry, it probably of relational accession in like a holographic type nature, to have this kind of demonstrate this kind of recall. So, as I will suggest, this is accessed from literal space-time coordinates that the memory corresponds to, and this is a non-computational, quasi-instantaneous accession. So we can calculate the memory storage estimate under computational functionalism. If we're saying that memory is a computational process and it's being stored as bits, we can do a calculation and test that. Okay, so what does the neurocomputational model suggest is the memory encoding capacity of the brain? Because that is what is going to have to account for this anomalous, extraordinary autobiographical recall demonstrated in hyperthymesia. And we can do a pretty simple calculation. It's rough, but it gives us an estimate, and that's kind of what we're looking for. We know quantitatively, kind of precisely from actual cell counts, about how many neurons there are in the human brain. And again, this is rough because we're talking about neurons, but there's also supporting cells like glia, which actually like equal the volume of neurons in the brain and are actively involved in regulating the synaptic function, this synaptic junction. But I'm still saying, so it's a correlate of consciousness, but just not the basal unit like the glia cells. But Uh, we're just looking for a pretty simple, straightforward calculation and simplifying the system so we're not bogged down in the details. We can do a coarse-grained approximation, taking the number of neurons in that have been counted quite literally, and taking an approximate number of synapses per neuron, and we can get an estimated memory capacity of the brain, which is about 10 to the 15 bytes, which is 1 petabyte, 1 quadrillion bytes. And that can store approximately a little over 15 days of continuous uncompressed 4K video at 30 frames per second, 8-bit color depth per channel. So uh, for most of us, this level of memory storage is not a problem. So 15 days of what would be superior recall if we could watch a video of any moment of the last 15 days, that'd be a lot better than my memory recall over the last 15 days. I mean, it's pretty clear, but probably not as clear as it would be if I had a video that was recording every continuous moment, much like what people have with hyperthymesia. So this is one of the reasons why the computational paradigm is able to skate by. It's like, okay, 1 petabyte of memory, that's probably about enough to explain my behavior, my level of memory recall. But we run into a bit of an issue when we're talking about somebody with hyperthymesia, because to store the amount of memory that they're able to demonstrate, let's say continuous 4K video for 60 years, you'd need 1,000 times this level of memory. You need 1,000 petabytes. You need an exabyte of memory storage, which it cannot be accounted for with a model of the brain where the synapse is functioning as a bit, as a logic gate, an on-off state, a computational system. So there's a problem with the neurocomputational paradigm. And actually, I was being very generous with that last rough calculation because I was using the entire brain, and it's known that the entire brain is not involved in memory. Actually, the formation of memory traces is primarily attributed when you go and you look to see where memories, at least a correlate of a memory being stored in the brain. It's primarily in this little structure here, the hippocampus. There's other areas, but this is the most active structure of the brain involved in memory storage, it appears. And that represents about 0.5% of the total brain volume. So we could take that initial very generous estimate I gave the computational paradigm and now tailor it to a more realistic situation, and we're talking about 5 terabytes. I've got a hard drive here on my desk that has 5 terabytes of storage capacity. And so that is what we're saying is the capacity of the human brain. And this is just, on closer scrutiny, this is not feasible. In fact, with certain conditions, we can see that it is wrong. It can't account for the behavior that's being observed. That is a big problem for a scientific model if it cannot match reality in its description. Now, I should mention also, though, that the situation gets a little bit more complex with the neurocomputational paradigm because they'll talk about Hebbian mechanism and synaptic potentiation underlying memory. Uh, and, this is all uh, important aspects of memory. So certainly you can observe this and these kind of the synaptic plasticity that's at play when we're learning something and it's memory it's forming a memory of something. But one of the things is that the long-term potentiation that we're seeing is associated with memory, but it might be more of like an indexing or tagging mechanism. We're seeing how a registry is formed that is acting as like an address for a memory, but not necessarily the process of it being encoded in a digital-like mechanism, which we've just seen fall short of actually being able to explain the capacity that the brain has for memory. So it's not the synapse. There's a good reason to believe that the cartoon model of the neuron doesn't cut it. It doesn't explain observed, documented, quantified phenomenon like hyperthymesia. But certainly, we're not going to throw out everything that's been learned, like synaptic plasticity. It's definitely playing a role, and it actually plays very closely into what we're going to be looking at with quantum resonance via space-time topology or Einstein-Rosen bridges. So one thing that we could look at to resolve this problem with the prevailing model that seems to be wrong, or at least in some major ways incorrect, not totally encapsulating a full explanation, is to go beyond the level of the synapse. So we could go to synaptomic architectonics, so the subcellular level. And immediately this would start to solve some of the issues, even for if we wanted to, like, say, maintain a computational functionalism type paradigm, because going to the subcellular level, we're now talking about molecular level encoding that would immediately exponentially expand the storage capacity of the brain. But what's more is that it would necessarily introduce in quantum states because we're at the quantum level. We're talking about molecules and atoms here, and in some instances, even subatomic entities like the flow of electrons and protons. Because this is a quantum domain and things start to get a little bit more nonlinear when we're talking about the quantum domain, aspects like non-locality become much more pronounced. Non-locality being where things that are separated spatially seem to have a interaction, quasi-instantaneous type interaction that is irregardless of their spatial distance. That's like quantum entanglement type phenomenon you could think of as an example. So we look at the structures that are in the synapse. The synapse is obviously involved with the correlates of consciousness, the correlates of memory, forming memory traces. And even in the postsynaptic density here, you can see that this macromolecular assembly, and being a macromolecular structure comprised of molecules, it's involving quantum states and quantum phenomenology. And we see that we got things like these red lines here. This is actin. This is an intermediate filament, very akin to microtubules, which we see in green here. And this is very important in synaptic plasticity, which just mentioned is important in brain function and the correlates of consciousness and memory and forming memory traces in the brain, which is definitely occurring. And what we see is that this has a very integral interplay with microtubule polymerization and some of these dendritic uh, um, structures here. They're called some in some cases dendritic spines. You can see them forming when new things are being learned and new memories are forming, and it involves the action of microtubules. Without microtubules and the related intermediate filaments and microtubule-associated proteins and the postsynaptic density structure, you don't have synaptic plasticity. So it absolutely involves the subcellular level. There's no question about that, actually. Although for some reason it's still that neuroscientists, at least in most conventional approaches, want to keep it at the level of just the synapse. But undoubtedly, the microtubules are involved in neuronal action, neuronal activity. So for neuronal plasticity, you need microtubule activity. And so this is a diagram from Hameroff's consciousness cognition in the neuronal cytoskeleton. And so for those who might not be entirely familiar, Stuart Hameroff, he was an anesthesiologist. He's now actually an astrobiologist. He's looking for signs of consciousness in macromolecules or aromatic amino acids in samples from outer space. Very interesting work. But he developed one of the first unified physics explanations of quantum mechanisms of consciousness with the Nobel laureate, Nobel Prize winning physicist Roger Penrose. In this image that I have here, this is actually this is from an article I posted not too long ago on the clash of consciousness, and what it's attempting to demonstrate here is our computational paradigm. You got a microchip here in the brain, and that's what's controlling the behavior here. It's just ones and zeros, on and off states, and it's all programmable and deterministic, and that's the prevailing scientific model. But then there's another popular one. I don't necessarily ascribe to it, but I like it. I like aspects of it. Integrated information theory by Tononi, and it's represented here by the Greek symbol phi. And this is interesting because it had this huge discussion in the journal Nature, where there was the computational functionalism crew that was saying that the integrated information theory is pseudoscience because it posits that consciousness is occurring at like a fundamental level, and therefore it's unscientific. And they wrote a whole attack piece against it, or putting forth the reasons why they think that it shouldn't even be considered as science. And then there was like a rebuttal by an independent group on why, hey, it's like, we need to be level-headed here and, consider all theories equally. So that's the article that's available on the SpaceFed website. But that's, if you were wondering what this is depicting, that's what it's attempting to depict. So something that's more like consciousness is occurring at a more fundamental level of universal dynamics versus a computational emergentism type paradigm. And that is orchestrated objective reduction, which we're seeing here. It's positing that the elements of proto-consciousness are occurring all around us all the time in every molecular and atomic action because of how it's involving quantum states. And so we're looking at these subcellular assemblies. You've got the microtubules, which I was showing is very important in that synapse. And the microtubules are comprised of smaller subunits, tubulin subunits, which you can see here. And these tubulin subunits have aromatic amino acids within them. They can form oscillating dipoles. And what orchestrated objective reduction, which is one of the first models of consciousness that is involving a unified physics mechanism, in fact, involving a quantum gravitational description of the behavior of matter, operational in all matter, but particularly in an orchestrated, organized fashion in the cellular system and in neurons of the brain. That it has this idea where it's actually the quantum states are forming very specific space-time topologies. And these space-time topologies are then objectively determining the outcome of certain quantum states and determining the quantum to classical transition, and that is involved in a non-computational mechanism of consciousness because of its non-programmable nature. And so just for a quick recap for anybody that's not totally familiar with it, and I'm bringing up the orchestrated objective reduction because what we're looking at can, in a certain sense, be thought of as an extension of orchestrated objective reduction. It's if anything, building on certain elements of that model and kind of expanding on it and refining it. But so it's important to kind of understand the orchestrated objective reduction model in this consideration. And so it's basically if you have molecules, let's say these are aromatic amino acids in the tubulin, they make up microtubules that make up neurons in the brain. They can form a superposition of state, quantum superposition, and this quantum superposition, as Penrose has described, is also going to have not just a superposition of the quantum state, but a superposition of space-time geometry. And you get this bifurcating space-time geometry. But he says, Penrose, that this is a unstable geometry of space-time. And at a certain time, this is the Diozzi-Penrose time, uh, when it gets to a certain threshold energy here, uh, it's going to cause a collapse into only one curvature of space-time corresponding with matter, right? Because matter is a stress energy tensor that curves space-time. So if it's in a superposition, it can curve space-time in two places or more. But then because that has an unstable energy distribution, it's going to collapse to a more stable energy distribution, which is one curvature of space-time. And that's the transition from a quantum to a classical reality. Now, there's some issues with this, namely for us, we don't believe that there is a quantum superposition, and that there is a actual wave function collapse. So because that is a artifact of the Copenhagen interpretation of quantum mechanics. And actually, when you get to a unified physics and level, you cannot use the Copenhagen interpretation of quantum mechanics. You need something like Bohmian mechanics, pilot wave theory, and in that there's no collapse of the wave function. There's non-locality in a way, so you do have a kind of superposition. But so those are just some caveats on why we're talking about an extension of this theory and a refinement of it. And so that's what we're building on is looking at a underlying space-time geometry for quantum states operational in the synaptomic architectonics of the neuronal synapse of the brain and how that's involved in memory. So at the normal scale of our perception, well, actually, this is even below our level of perception. This is at like the atomic scale. Space looks relatively flat, but we know if we zoom in to the micro scale, zoom into the quantum domain, the Planck scale here, space actually, by most models, is thought to take on a multiply connected, highly dynamic topology. Multiply connected in the sense that it's not simply connected. You can't just go from point A to point B along a straight path. At the Planck scale, you try to go from point A to point B, you'd probably end up at point C because you're going through all these shortcuts and bridges in the actual geometry of spacetime at that scale. It's a fluctuating nexus of black hole wormhole particle pairs, geons. And what Nassim and the research team here at ISF has shown is that actually our particles that at the going back to the hadron scale are like space matter. They're comprised of highly coherent phases of this quantum foam space-time structure. And just as it's multiply connected here, since these become highly coherent phases of that, even our particles become highly coherent phases of those fluctuating wormhole, black hole, white hole pairs. And so actually the particles that we're made out of, this is a depiction of the proton, is actually an Einstein-Rosen bridge. This is showing how the electromagnetic energy in the vacuum state of the electromagnetic field is at the Planck scale is so great that it curves space into these encapsulated spherical objects, it infinitely curves space, and these are wormholes or gravitationally bound electromagnetic objects, or as we call them in many of the research papers here, Planck spherical units. And these comprise the fundamental particle like the proton is composed of these, and it becomes a very coherent agglomeration of those, and it takes on many of the same characteristics like it is itself in Einstein-Rosen bridge. So the particles that we're made out of are bridges through space-time. So if we're talking about memory as an accession through a bridge-like architecture of space-time, it's actually not so far-fetched. And there's reason, good reason to believe that this is absolutely the case, that matter is made out of this multiply connected space-time topology, and that all protons are, in a sense, connected together in a network of Einstein-Rosen bridges. You can see it because taking that understanding, you can output things like the Hubble constant. In fact, if you take the radius of the observable universe and calculate the number of those PSU geon-like objects that pixelate the surface of that sphere, then you find that it actually equals the number of PSU pixelation of the surface of every proton. That's what's being depicted in this uh, uh, equation here. So this is a very holographic nature of the universe, and it's again hinting that the even the surface pixelation of the universe, that holographic surface density information, is connected to the surface of every proton, because there's actually the exact same number of bits between the two, between the proton and the universe. And also, when you consider this entanglement nexus of matter that we're made out of, uh, if you consider every proton being connected to every other proton, then it actually outputs the holographic mass of the proton, which allows you to calculate the observed rest mass of the proton. So we can see that actually the mass and forces at the hadronic scale that give matter its characteristics are a result of the fact that that matter is connected non-locally through this space-time geometry, this space-time architecture. And so this might seem fanciful to some, but I'll just quickly reiterate that the mathematics demonstrate that this is most likely the case. And it helps us, when you take this understanding, it helps us to explain biological activity. So when we're talking about those subcellular cytoarchitectonic domains, these structures that involved in forming the quantum states, like the chromophore residues, these aromatic amino acids here that are all through the tubulin that makes up the microtubules, these chromophore residues. These are made out of protons, and as we've shown, these protons have a multiply connected space-time topology. So this is an important thing to keep in mind as we come to the final part of the big picture, this whole new understanding that's emerging. And so they're connected to the quantum scale of space-time structure as well. And that includes many different kinds of macromolecular assemblies, and so including things like DNA. So in future work, we might explain why DNA is a memory molecule. We believe that with this mechanism, we can explain some very important aspects of DNA and how it forms the memory molecule of the biological system. But right now, we're not so much concerned with like morphological memory that DNA encodes. We're more looking at memory in terms of how it relates to correlates of consciousness, states of consciousness. So as far back as 1935, Einstein and his colleague Rosen attempted to solve the particle problem of physics and general relativity, because what has now become the standard model describes point-like objects. But that led them to describe, uh, because that involves a whole host of problems like pathological spacetimes like singularities. So the solution was to extend particles, extend their spacetime geometry, and that's where you get the idea of wormholes and Einstein-Rosen bridges. Now, wormholes, as they're popularly known today, we usually think of these like cosmological objects, but where they came from was describing particles. This is another important thing to keep in mind. And the way that that, that we understand today as cosmological objects is kind of missing the true application of this space-time geometry. Today, a popular idea is that we can describe all kinds of non-local behavior, even particle behavior like quantum entanglement via this space-time geometry. And this was another subsequent study by Einstein and his colleagues, Einstein, Podolsky, and Rosen, called EPR entanglement or EPR pairs. And both of these are involving non-locality. One is non-locality in general relativity, one is non-locality in quantum physics, and we can bring these two together for unified physics, and we have a singular description. Non-locality in particles and at the particle level and in quantum physics is a result of non-locality in general relativity via multiply connected space-time geometry and Einstein-Rosen bridge. So we can take this and extend the orchestrated objective reduction model of Hameroff, kind of building on some of the key insights that they have put forward, which are absolutely brilliant. Instead of looking at superposition and wave function collapse, we can look at what about when these quantum states in the brain and in the microtubules and the tubulin are forming quantum entanglement. Well, this is going to form a geometrodynamic qubit circuit where the two are equivalent. And you've probably heard about this as ER equals EPR. We have a space-time diagram where this is space and time. So this is drawing a world line here. This is going forward in time. This is our spatial dimension. And the important thing to remember is that you're always moving. So even when you think that you're sitting still, like right now, hopefully listening attentively to this discussion, maybe not so much, I don't blame you, but you're actually moving actually quite quickly with a high velocity through space. You're on spaceship Earth, which is orbiting the sun, and the sun is moving through the galactic plane. So you're always moving, and there's no shortage of information and no shortage of surface on the fine scale structure of space to imprint information on. Space is very large, which is why if you're talking about something like a hyperthymesia and the information is being imprinted into the structure of space and then retrieved via the potentiation traces of the synapse, there's no limit to how much information can be encoded and retrieved quasi-instantaneously through the non-local connectivity circuits of space-time geometry. So this is one of the neurons in your brain, and it's going along this world line, and it's having molecular scale interactions which are involving quantum physics, and part of the description of those interactions involves those molecules forming entanglement states necessarily. That entanglement state is actually entangled all the way to the fine scale structure of space-time, and it's leaving a memory imprint in space-time architecture. That's what these wavy lines emanating from the microtubule is meant to indicate. And then as you go along, you have different kinds of configuration states. And let's say that these are like topological qubit states on the microtubule that are being formed, and that's imprinting via the um, gravitational memory imprint onto the structure of space. And so when you need to recall a memory, you have a memory formation event here at A. It's going through electronic switching. So these are electrical signals occurring in the brain as information is coming in through the senses, and it's causing neurons to fire, and there's electrical currents going around. It's causing the electronic dipoles of these tubular subunits to switch quite rapidly, and it's undergoing different configuration states. But you need to recall something, and it spontaneously goes back into this same configuration state that corresponded with A. Even though you're at space-time coordinate beta, you can pull the information from space-time coordinate alpha via that multiply connected space-time geometry, because every molecule, every particle that you're made of is multiply connected through space-time via Einstein-Rosen bridges. So This is microtubule entanglement topology and space memory connectivity circuit. This is how we begin to understand memory in the biological system and even memory more generally in physics and physical systems in general. So one of the key things to understand in this regards and this is information that's coming out very soon from our research group. We're going back into the subatomic scale within the proton and looking at uh, um, the quantum vacuum energy density in the high coherence phase within the core of matter, within the core of the proton. And what you see is that it's emitting these high intensity electromagnetic waves because it's at like the Planck density, the highest energy density you can get into an enclosed encapsulated space. And because there's a vortex, a dual torus topology motion, a fluid dynamic motion of this high coherence field of the quantum vacuum fluctuation energy density, it's generating a magnetic field as these electromagnetic waves go through this transverse magnetic field being generated due to the current the verticular flow of the system. It's being converted into gravitational waves via the Gertenstein-Zeldovich effect. And then you can actually see that these gravitational waves result in the Schwarzschild solution for the proton. It forms a black hole at the lambda radius, the Compton, I'm sorry, the reduced Compton radius, what we call the lambda radius of the proton. So, a demonstration that matter is emitting gravitational waves all the time. The matter that you're comprised of. Not only is it a multiply connected spacetime topology, i.e., black hole wormhole pairs or Einstein-Rosen bridge wormhole, it's emitting gravitational waves as black holes do. Even though it's a quantum scale black hole, it's still emitting gravitational waves. So this is our proton, the reduced Compton radius proton core that's a black hole because that electromagnetic energy density is being converted into gravitational waves and it causes a black hole formation. And it's causing continuous gravitational wave emission. And one of the things about gravitational waves, gravitational waves were predicted by general relativity, but so was the gravitational memory effect, which has not yet been confirmed like gravitational waves have been, but it's very likely to be confirmed soon, observed empirically. And it's that with the gravitational memory effect, you can see that these gravitational waves are leaving memory imprints continuously in space-time. And these memory imprints are in the form of changes in the position and momentum of, let's say, you have a particle in space. If a gravitational wave is passed through, space is going to retain a memory of the passage of those gravitational waves. And your particle won't just go through as if space is totally flat and without structure through that space. You're going to see changes in its position and momentum. That's a frequency. So what we're talking about is a frequency encoding in space-time. And that's one of the reasons why isn't necessarily a computational mechanism, because we're talking about frequency and resonance, which you can think of even electromagnetic waves, how we transmit information with those. And it's via things like frequency modulation and amplitude modulation. So we're talking about encoding information into space with frequency modulation, amplitude modulation, not as digital bits. So now we have our carbon nucleus. So now we're starting to look at the gravitational wave structure of biology, of a biomolecule. This is a carbon atom here. And then that carbon atom makes up, a great many of them make up our neuron, and our neuron is emitting gravitational waves, leaving a gravitational wave memory imprint as we're traveling through space. Remember, you're always traveling through space. On Spaceship Earth, hurtling through the galactic plane and imprinting all along your world line that you're tracing out over time. So we have our neuron that is going along this world line, leaving gravitational memory imprints, and these are non-locally connected, that is connected in a superluminal fashion, where fashion light signals, quasi-instantaneous signals can be sent through this shortcut in the geometry of space-time. And you're going along, leaving these memory imprints in space, and each one of these is accessible via this quantum geometrodynamic circuit. So now, when you have a memory formation at alpha, there's information that's coming into the brain via these electrical signals, and you're getting switching that's occurring, and this is leaving a memory imprint. But now you need to recall something that goes back into the topological configuration of A when you're at spacetime coordinate beta, and you can recall the information at spacetime coordinate alpha. And since there's no limit to the amount of fine scale structure of space-time that you can imprint onto, and since you could maintain these non-local connections nearly indefinitely, this explains something like hyperthymesia. That why they're able to have this extraordinary autobiographical recall, because in certain individuals, they are able to literally access the space-time coordinate and recall all the information directly from that space-time coordinate in quasi-instantaneous memory accession. And so when that information comes through via quantum entanglement here, it causes something like photon emission, which has been shown to regulate synaptic activity, which collectively generates very specific brainwave states, and that is correlated with the memory, recalling the event from spacetime coordinate alpha, even though you're at spacetime coordinate beta. And so each one of these steps has been documented. So honeybee brain oscillations are generated by microtubules. So we know that the synapse, its activity can be is most likely being generated by microtubule activity. We see microtubules emitting photons, and those photons regulating synaptic and neuronal activity. So uh, the information retrieval by the microtubule and its action on the synapse to cause brainwave states, which is the memory recall. Each one of these steps has been empirically documented. So, in summary, accounting for that extraordinary autobiographical recall, can theory match observation? Um, Subcellular information processing involving macromolecules is operable in brain function associated with conscious states. Quantum states of subcellular architectures drive neuronal function. Collective neuronal function correlates with phenomenal experience. The quantum states are imprinted in the fine-scale structure of spacetime itself, a space memory network via gravitational memory effect. And memory is accessed directly via entanglement structure of geometrodynamic circuits, a non-computational mechanism of information processing and memory operable in biology. So, I'd like to thank you all for joining me on this exploration and making it to the end of our discussion. Thank you all for um, tuning in and sharing in some of this exciting discoveries that are being made here at ISF with our research. So we've got some time here. I think I went a bit over the 45 minutes, but we've got some time here to take some questions. I'd love to see what kind of thoughts and inquiries this might have brought up. So I'll look in the Q&A field. So if you have a question, if you put it into the Q&A field, I can pull the question from there. Okay, Deborah Green, if you're still with us, let me see. I think I can pull you up so that you can ask your question. I see a question in the uh, Q&A field here. Just one moment. Hi, Deborah. I think if you unmute, we can hear you speak. You said you asked, how are you defining the terms energy and also information?
Hi, yes. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can hear you.
All right. So yeah, that's the burning question.
Okay. Okay. Excellent. Yeah.
And
So
I
uh,
appreciate you. I was like the last person to ask a question, so I appreciate you addressing my question first. But
you know,
some of the who asked earlier, I hope you will be able to get to them. Thank you.
I think it's a really great clarifying question because those are terms that can seem kind of nebulous. And it's like if you're talking about, if I'm sitting here talking about, and it draws the energy in and the information in, it's like, physically, what are we talking about when we're talking about energy and information? And actually, I think I might be able to illustrate that by going to one of the slides I have in the presentation, uh, and it has to do with work that we're doing right now as well, that probably will be the topic of my next presentation, the next presentation that I'll do here. Uh, Let me pull this up. So I'm going to go back to share screen. So many of you have probably seen this before. Now, this is some of the preliminary research. We've been working on the formalism and refining it. So this is not the final form of what you'll see, but essentially what we're looking at here is a information and energy transmission, a mechanism that we've discovered that is occurring from the Planck scale, quantum vacuum, high coherence quantum vacuum fluctuations up to the scale of the brain. So when we're talking about energy, what we're talking about fundamentally electromagnetic energy. This is depicting quantum vacuum fluctuations of the electromagnetic field. So the ground state energy of the electromagnetic field, which is filled with 0 point energy, and so it's constantly fluctuating. And so the energy is primarily electromagnetic in nature, and we can see that at certain levels of the biological system, like with the benzene ring, because this is causing an electronic dipole oscillation when this energy is being transferred. So we can even think about some of the energy that might be being transferred is that gravitational memory imprint is causing a oscillation of the molecules. And if it's an oscillating dipole, it's going to be an electronic oscillating dipole. That is going to emit photons. And we see that in like the super radiance effect of mitochondria and biophoton emission and superradiance microtubules and biophoton emission in mitochondria. So the energy is vibrational in nature. It's an oscillation, and oftentimes this oscillation is a circular spin or a rotation. Now, in terms of the information, that oscillation uh, is a frequency. So that is carrying information. So the information is in the frequency. So when the way that I like to explain this is with our modern day telecommunications, wireless telecommunications, which is electromagnetic waves, and we encode vast amounts of information, even the information that is so the information that's coming in and out of our cell phones, for instance, that stream a video or play a song. At some point, actually, it's going to a pure analog wave that is encoding the information with frequency modulation and amplitude modulation. So that's the information is actually an oscillation of frequency. And because that's a fundamental level of information, it's non-computational because it's a continuous wave, like an analog wave. It's not digital in that way. Although a wave can be made out of discretized units, just like how an ocean wave is made out of water molecules. So there's a kind of a hybrid system there, discrete and continuous in the same system, and that's a unified physics type perspective. I don't know, does that help give some like physical meaning to what we're talking about with energy and information?
It does. And I guess a follow-up question is, in terms of information, is the information itself what is catalyzing the modulation of frequency? Or, in other words, is your definition of information as modulation of frequency, is that actually describing what information does instead of what information is?
Yeah, that's actually that's getting into some philosophical level consideration, and I love that because uh,
And
it's,
I don't mean to, complicate things or go off into philosophical land, but anyway, that's
I
what's on
love
my
it.
mind.
It's actually critically important because at some point there needs to be an understanding of ontological and epistemological level understanding of what we're talking about when we say information, especially when we're talking about a potential correlate of consciousness. But so certainly uh, the informational states which are represented that can be represented as actual physical configurations of matter. Eh, Like in the biological system, in the cell, this can be the topological configuration of the tubulin subunits on a microtubule. So it has a very specific physical configuration that is an informational state, and that is determining the frequency modulation. That's what's modulating the frequency. But because it's a feedback feed forward type system, it's also affected by the particular modulation of the frequency. So it can be changed by the information, and it contains the information that's changing the frequency. Now, because it's one of the reasons it's a philosophical consideration is because does information have any meaning outside of a perceptive system, outside of an awareness, outside of consciousness? And so that's kind of a key distinction here, and it kind of goes into the nature of qualia because, you know, in a certain sense, or at least to some, information is something that has meaning to a sentient system, to an awareness. And while a physical system can have a particular configuration that corresponds to an information state of a sentient system, in and of itself, it's just a physical configuration. And it's kind of meaningless outside of perception by a sentient system. And that's qualia. So it's like the color blue, the color red. Uh, it has a physical correlate. It's the wavelength of light of electromagnetic radiation. And there's very specific wavelengths of electromagnetic radiation, but that color, the information that it contains, like the color blue, that information is only within the consciousness of a perceptual system. Now, one of the things about the level of investigation that we're at right now, the level of exploration that we're at right now, is we're talking about just a mechanism of memory. So we're not yet uh, discussing the ultimate ontological nature of information, just that we're kind of actually taking it for granted that there's this ontological primary, which is a perceptual system that's there. And so that the information and energy transmission associated with the information transmission uh, has meaning to that system. I
Cool.
don't,
I get
I,
it.
okay.
And the feedback, feed forward influence that you described, it's kind of chicken and egg. And so then the question is, what came first? But we don't need to go there.
Well, and that's actually one of the wonderful things about considering ontological primaries, because what you're actually getting into is the heart of what is there fundamentally, almost like without cause. I mean, you could perhaps talk about an endless chain of causation, but it's believed that there are certain aspects of reality that are primary in a ontological conception of existence. So the, and for me, yeah, it would be that the meaning has to be there for that information to have any kind of significance. So yeah, but that might be another discussion for another day.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Deborah. Okay, all right. Let's see. We can do another question. You'll have to forgive me though, because here is getting quite late, and so I've already had a, quite a day. So I'll try to be as coherent as I can in answering some of these questions. Oh, I think, okay, just one moment. I see a hand up. So actually, because it's taking me too long to go through and read each one, I'm gonna pick uh, one of these raised hands. So Luca, can you, are you unmuted? Can you speak?
Yeah, can you hear
Okay.
me?
Okay, yes, I can hear you.
That's amazing. Thank you so much, first of all, for your work and Nassim's work. I've been following for 12 years and it's amazing. So, my question is, what is your experience with accessing the field? Because it seems to be all about vortexes, and I think with the crystals, you kind of try to put kind of as I understood, a gradient in the field
Yeah.
to kind of access energy from it. So I wonder if you have like explanations how you personally, because I look at you and you look always on 100, like super energetic, super focused. And yeah, if you can kind of explain your own experience with integrating the information in your own kind of practice and how you think about accessing energy with the body.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's so much of this new the physics that we're coming upon on understanding the biological system. So much of that is actually shaped by my own experience of accessing information, because what I find is it's as much of an energetic state as anything. So it's like, um, when it comes time to like share some of the research that we've been doing, of course, like I've spent a many days this year alone going over this information, and so it's learned in a certain sense in that way, but I find actually accessing it is much more about a vibrational state. When
Mm,
there's the right kind of energetic and vibrational state, I feel like the information is almost effortlessly available, or at
mm,
least it becomes much more accessible, because there's so much potential uh, information on the things that we're studying and discovering, that I kind of need it to just flow. In like a discussion like this. And so actually a lot of how I experience the information being accessed is guiding, what we're uh, describing as the biophysical mechanism. So for me, it is very validating, because when I'm seeing the mathematics describe the cross-scale resonance from the high coherence quantum vacuum phase, and when you get the right kind of coherence at each fractal iteration of the scale going into like
mm,
microtubules and cell and brain biology, and then all aligns and you get the resonant information transfer, uh, and you can see it in the mathematics. uh, to me it's like a light coming on, because it's like I experienced that myself. When there's the right kind of vibrational and energetic alignment, the information and energy flows.
mhm.
Yeah, yeah. I think that in that way it is very experiential.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, I don't know if that was exactly what you had in mind in terms of your question. Oh, we might have lost audio. Well, in any case, look, very much appreciate your long time following of our work for 12 years now. That's just so fantastic. It's like we've been on this journey of exploration together, so I very much appreciate that. So I think though we've come to the end of our available time here. I want to thank you all so much for joining. I hope it was informative for you, and uh, this is all work that is in progress. So we're going to have a lot more information on this, and I'm excited to share some of the new insights and discoveries that are occurring almost daily here in regards to this picture that's emerging. That is just it's so exciting, and so I'm very grateful to be able to share this information with you all, and even more grateful that you have an interest in learning about some of these fundamental aspects of reality and the nature of our existence and being. So this is just really fantastic. I'll look forward to our next session together. And in the meantime, may the vacuum be with you, and have a great time. I'll see you all then.